Hi there and welcome to another video from Hegarty Maths. It's Mr. Hegarty here, and in this video we're dealing with brackets involving surds, our first video on that. Now before we get going, let's recap on something we've talked about extensively on Hegarty Maths before, the distributive law. Suppose I asked you to work out 5 multiplied by 10 add 2. We know by the distributive law that what I can do is I can work out 5 multiplied by 10 and add it to the answer 5 multiplied by 2. So I know for sure this is going to be 5 multiplied by 10 add 5 multiplied by 2. 5 multiplied by 10 is 50, 5 multiplied by 2 is 10, so the answer is 60. Now sometimes mathematicians actually write 5 times brackets 10 add 2 like this. They drop the times sign and they just have 5 brackets 10 add 2, and that means exactly the same thing, and it means that I can multiply 5 by 10 and add the answer 5 multiplied by 2. That's just something we're going to see in the future, so just bear that in mind now. Now by extension of the distributive law, say if I was dealing with 35 and 12 and I broke 35 up into 30 add 5 and 10 add 2, by extension I can actually do the distributive law on this as well. And let me show you what happens. If I can multiply everything by 30, so I can do 30 multiplied by 10 and add it to the answer 30 multiplied by 2, so 30 multiplied by 10 add 30 multiplied by 2, and then what I can do is I could do, this here is positive 5, so I could do positive 5 multiplied by 10, positive 5 multiplied by positive 2, so that would be plus 5 multiplied by 10 plus 5 multiplied by 2, and if I work that out I'll get myself 300 add 60 add 50 add 10, and here I've got a 60, 50 plus 10 is another 60, 60 add 60 is 120, 300 add 120, I get myself the answer 420. And have a look here, if I do 35 multiplied by 12, I do get 420, so it definitely works. Okay, and actually that's what we do in long multiplication. So if you look up the long multiplication method, if I was to, when I show you how to do 35 multiplied by 12, actually if you remember what we do 2 times 5, here was the 2 times 5, we do 2 times 30, here was the 2 times 30, we do 10 times 5, here's the 10 times 5, and 10 times 30. So it's exactly what we're used to really, it's just written in a slightly different way. Now just bear in mind, if there was a takeaway here, let's say, then it would be 5 multiplied by 10, take away 5 multiplied by 2. If there was a takeaway here, we just have to be careful to multiply everything in the second bracket by negative 5 and not just 5. But we're going to use this distributive law in both these type of cases with 2 brackets and 1 bracket in the forthcoming video. Right, let's have a go at doing some questions. Evaluate without a calculator the following. Now this means I can multiply both terms inside the bracket by root 2. So let's do that. Root 2 multiplied by 8. I'm going to first just write it like this. Root 2 multiplied by root 8. And then we're going to add the answer to root 2 multiplied by root 2. Now root 2 multiplied by root 8 is root 16. Root 2 multiplied by root 2, well that's root 2 squared, which must be 2. Root 16 is 4, so this is really 4 add 2, and the answer is 6. Now I'm going to start doing this slightly quicker in future. Root 2 multiplied by root 8, I'm just in my head going to say that's root 16, okay, without showing the intermediary working. So let's have a go here. Root 5 multiplied by root 20, add root 5 multiplied by root 5. Root 5 multiplied by root 20 is root 100 in one go, using the multiplication law of square roots, and root 5 multiplied by root 5 is obviously root 5 squared, which is 5. So this just must simply be add 5. Root 100 is 10, so this is really 10 add 5, and the answer therefore is 15, and we're done. Let's try some more. Evaluate this without a calculator. Now you'll see this is very similar to what we've done previously, other than there's numbers in front of the square roots. Okay, but it's the same thing applies, so let's give it a go. And there's a takeaway, by the way. 5 root 8 multiplied by 2 root 8. I'm going to first, in my first line, write it in its brackets. 5 root 8 multiplied by 2 root 8. Then we're going to do 5 root 8 multiplied by negative 3 root 2. So it's going to be negative sign, and we have 5 root 8 multiplied by 3 root 2. That negative there marries up with that negative there. Now, we can do multiplication in any order. So why don't I do the 5 multiplied by 2 separately and do the root 8 multiplied by root 8 separately? Okay, and similarly in the second case, why don't I do the 5 multiplied by 3 separately, and why don't I do the root 8 multiplied by root 2 separately? Okay, because I can simplify the square roots. So let's give that a go. 5 multiplied by 2 gives me 10. I'm going to put a bracket around it to remind me to multiply. Root 8 multiplied by root 8 is root 8 squared, which is 8. Put them in brackets just to make sure I don't think that's 108 and it's 10 times 8. Then we're going to take away 5 by 3, which is 15, and root 8 multiplied by root 2 is root 16. And root 16, the square root of 16, is 4. So what have we got? We've got 80, take away 60, and the answer is therefore 20. And we're done. Let's try some more. Here we've got 2 brackets on the go. So let's try and do what we've talked about in the intro to the video. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do 3 multiplied by the 4 and 3 multiplied by the positive root 2, and I'm going to do, now careful, there's a takeaway sign there, so think of that as negative root 8. I'm going to multiply that by 4 and multiply that by positive root 2. So let's write that out. 3 multiplied by 4 is 12. 3 multiplied by positive root 2 is plus 3 root 2. Nice and easy for the first bit. Now this here is negative root 8. Negative root 8 times 4. That's negative 4 root 8. Negative root 8 times positive root 2 is going to be negative root 16. 8 times 2. Okay? So let's do a bit of tidying up. This is 12. Now 3 root 2's take away 4 root 8's. We can't do anything just now, so let's just leave that as it is just for a moment. But take away root 16 is going to be take away 4. And 12 take away 4 is 8. So we're going to leave our answer like that. Now, do you think we're done? Unfortunately, we're not done, because we can simplify root 8. If you remember from my simplifying surds video, root 8 we can write as root 4 times 2, which is going to be equal to root 4 root 2, which is equal to 2 root 2. And you must simplify where you can. So we're going to replace root 8 with 2 root 2. This is going to be 8 plus 3 root 2, take away 4 times 2 root 2. So this is going to be 8 plus 3 root 2. 4 times 2 root 2 is going to be subtract 8 root 2. And therefore, we're nearly there, 8. And now we've got 3 root 2's, take away 8 root 2's, that's going to be negative 5 root 2. And so our answer is 8 subtract 5 root 2. And the last one, we're going to do the exact same thing, that multiplied by that multiplied by that, and then we're going to do this here, which is actually a negative 1, multiplied by that, multiplied by that. So let's give that a go. Now 3 root 2 multiplied by 2 root 2. Firstly, I'm just going to keep that in brackets. 3 root 2 multiplied by 2 root 2. And 3 root 2 multiplied by 5. Now straight away I can say that's 15 root 2 without much hassle there. And then we're going to say negative 1 multiplied by 2 root 2 is negative 2 root 2. Negative 1 multiplied by 5 is negative 5. This one's going to be a lot easier actually. Here we can do 3 multiplied by 3 separately to root 2 multiplied by root 2. So 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, and root 2 multiplied by root 2 is equal to 2. So this is 6 times 2, put in brackets around it so I don't get confused and think it's 62. 15 root 2 take away 2 root 2 is plus 13 root 2, and still we've got the take away 5 at the end, don't forget that. Now 6 multiplied by 2 is 12. 12 take away 5 is 7. So we've got 7 add 13 root 2, and that's it, we're done. So that's it for this video on brackets involving surds. Thanks for watching.